Well, this tip is sort of you might say, a companion with the previous one, 549, because they both ask questions about what happens in sunlight versus overcast light. So we'll address this one. The best way to find out about these things is to study what images of different colors do in overcast light and in sunlight. And the best way to do that is have the same image uh, in both that you can compare. Now, I pulled from pixabay.com these two peppers. You can see this one is lit by, well, I'm not sure it was direct sun, but it was a single warm light. You can tell that by the little bit of yellow green that we can see coming down here, like that. And then this one is outside in an overcast light. And you can see what's happening there in terms of color. Now, here's what you can look for, or you can study. For the person asked about the transition of going from the light to the shadow in images. So in the transition, that means that little area there where your shadow moves into light. We call that transition a terminator. So here in this pepper, now focus your attention just on shadow, where it's in shadow and where it's in light. And I like to say where it's in shadow, where it's not in shadow. And that's why I'd like to know tan, because it tells us that if we can just get ourselves accustomed to looking at it in terms of not just pepper, forget pepper, but in terms of where is the light, where are the light rays striking here. And we see this little area right in here. The light rays are hitting, the light's obviously coming from this direction. We can tell that by cast shadow being on this side. So the light rays are coming from like this direction here. And so right in here is that little transition part that the person was asking about. Now in the overcast, we have a transition too, but it's different. And something happens in overcast light that is different in color. In overcast light, the whole sky is the light. I pointed that out in the previous quick tip. So what's happening there is that the color changes. So we have a color change when we go from light to shadow. You can see here, right there is where it begins to go away from the light. In other words, the sky, the light coming from the sky, the light rays are just passing right by, about right in there. So what I'd like to show you, since it was the transition that the person asked about, I'm not sure I read the whole thing to you, but it was quite a long quick tip, and I truncated it, but it was the transition of what happens in light and shadow, and for those two kinds of light conditions. Well, I'm going to show you both. After pointing this out, I'm going to show you about managing your color to get those transitions. Then I'll just do a little bit. I'm not going to paint peppers because I'm showing you something about how to see and how to mix your color according to how you see. Now I have started out here, since this is green, in the green range. In the green range, we have it moving on this side. It goes a little bit more towards blue-green, this particular one, as it goes into shadow. And it gets just a tiny bit less saturated. Where she was asking about this part right in here. So that's what I want to show you, is how you can mix for that. And I will go here now. I have yellow-green here. I call it yellow-green because that is its hue. It's sap green, and this particular sap green is made by Daniel Smith, even though they don't make it anymore. But I think Gamlin has a sap green now, and Rembrandt has a sap green. That both are close to the Daniel Smith sap green. You can start out with that, because you're going to manipulate it anyway with other colors. So I just want to show you what happens here that is akin to what's happening here and here. So as we're changing for that transition, now in the transition, we're not going to be using the darkest dark, but what we're going to be using are those middle values that are in the transition. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take the darkest dark and I'm going to mix the middle value with this sap green. I want to show you what happens here. Put just enough there. I might have too much for that. Let's just see if we do. I'll mix two areas there. Now, there are other quick tips, some of our earlier quick tips especially, if you that are about my value line, because I prefer using the value line or setting up the value line to provide for all the colors I'm going to need when doing a painting. Since we're just going to be working with transition colors here, that's the main thing I want to focus on. So if we use into a yellow green, if a yellow green has come out of the tube, if you don't have a yellow green, but if you have a blue green, like phthalo green or the Rembrandt Viridian, then you can actually mix a transparent oxide red into those and you could get a yellow green. The transparent oxide red has the red in it, of course, that's going to neutralize that green part of the blue-green a little bit, but it has also the combination of the orange that's going to help that to become, or the yellow that's in that orange is going to help it to lean more towards yellow-green. So it's a little magic thing that happens there. But as we move up the value scale into the middle value of our colors that we're mixing, if you mix white into the yellow-green, this is going to be very, very close to where you need to be for that transition. I didn't get enough of that yellow green out there. I'm going to get that more like I want to get this area right here more like the darker side of a transition there. So what I'm looking for, really I'm looking at this part right here, because this I'm mixing towards if it were in overcast light. This on this part, the yellow green needs to be cooler, or if it's depending on whatever green it is, it needs to be cooler than this. That's what I'm going to be aiming for. All right, so there's that yellow green, and I'm going to get that just a little bit darker because I want that to be on the dark side of the transition. All right, now I'm going to make this one just a little bit lighter. I'm still just using white. And so, some people say don't mix white into your dark colors, you're going to get mud. That is a myth. You can mix white into your dark colors and according to what you need when you need to raise the value. If when you do that, your color seems to turn what people call chalky, you can add a little yellow back into it. But we wouldn't do that if we were painting for overcast, because the yellow is missing in overcast. The light in overcast doesn't have any warmth in it. It's a cool light. So we're mixing for a cool light there. Now I have there two values of that yellow green. I want to show you the difference here first of all. So, the difference in this and what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to put, this is the middle value of the darker middle. Let's call it darker middle value. I'm not going to call them by numbers because it depends on how you read numbers. I'm just going to say dark middle because if you learn to register visually how values read, you will know what dark middle means. And I have a middle value palette there, so you can squint your eyes and see these are very close. This one is almost exactly what my palette is. This is a little bit lighter. All right, there are the two values right there. And now before I get into the transition part of this, I'm going to mix the two values for if it is in sunlight. So that one, for the moment, we may change that a little bit, but for the moment, that one is if it is in shadow. Now, I'm in yellow green, we have the yellow in the green. in sunlight or in a warm light, I would raise that value not with white, but with yellow. Now I can show you how that works here. You can see that difference between those two. Now I may add a little white into it, but first of all, I'll just raise it with yellow. And now this is my Hansa yellow light. That's my yellow of choice. Most people are devotees to cadmium yellow light. That doesn't matter. They're going to do pretty much the same thing. It depends on how you mix them and how you handle them as to what they're going to do for you. I may need to put a little bit more of that Hansa yellow light on my palette. It's a little bit too conservative with how much of the fresh paint I put out that time. There we go. All right, now let's add some more to that. Let's get that the same value as this one. So I'll just add it into that and pull it inward to keep from spreading it all over the canvas. And you can watch the difference. The value raises, but you see this begins to feel like a livelier yellow-green. All right, need to add just a little bit more of that yellow. This part. And then I want to check for hue that I'm seeing in that pepper. Let's see. Very, very close. Can you see there? It's not quite. I need to lighten it a little bit more. I went a little heavy-handed on the dark there, so I'll have to mix a little bit more. But I want that to be the same value as this one. And then because this is for the demonstration, there we go. Those are pretty much the same value. And what I'm going to do next, now I'm going to take some of this so that you can see the difference. I hope I have enough mixed there that I can do that. And what I want there is a value lighter. Now this is transition. This is what the person is asking for, transition. So we're going to add this time a little bit more yellow and just a tad of white to get that on the light side of the transition. Let's see there, I may need a little bit more of that. Yeah, I do. You see, I went a little heavy-handed there with the white. So I'll go back in here and pick up some of this, but also go up here and pick up a little bit more of that yellow. All right, now I'm going to keep that yellow. I'm going to keep it leaning towards the warmth of yellow-green. There we go. I think that's pretty close to what I'm aiming for. Now for the transition colors. Now I'm going to show you now the difference in these two. So be sure the brush is clean. Now this is in the transition of the yellow-green. This is the dark side. And can you see how much warmer that is? So this is how we would handle for overcast light, a green or in this particular case, when you observe anything that's green in overcast light, look for, I'm not saying that's what you'll have, I'm saying look for it to be a cooler green, like that. Now, and then I'm going to do the one, this is on the light side. All right, so remember that transition between light and shadow is gradual. It's so difficult, and you really can't tell where the light ends and where the light ends and where the shadow begins. That's why we call it transition. It's that area. And the same thing happens in overcast light. We'll have that transition that goes from where the light rays that are coming from the whole sky, those rays are bouncing all over the place. They're not direct. Nevertheless, they're falling on areas of that pepper that are turned towards them, and areas of the pepper that turn away from them. They just keep falling this way. They don't just follow and go down and hit it, because the rays are falling, although they're dispersed and broken up. They're still falling in this direction. And here we have the light rays are coming from this direction, So where are they? Let those rays falling. Where are they hitting? Well, they're hitting on this side, and then as this turns away, fewer rays are hitting. And that's the transition right there where the fewer rays are hitting. And so let's get this, and I want to show you the difference of what we might see. There we go. That's there's the transition. Now here's how that can work as far as your painting goes. So I'll start. Let's rinse the brush off so I'll be sure that I don't have yellow in the brush called the overcast interpretation. I couldn't find an overcast. I was on Pixabay getting this stuff. I couldn't find an overcast pepper that was sitting in the same position as that one. So we have to imagine that this one would be sitting in the same position as that. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of, and I can do this two ways. I want this shadow part to be a little bit bluer. I could add the blue-green, which is in my case, it would be the Rembrandt Viridian, which is blue-green, and it's very, very dark, very transparent. I could add a little bit of that into it, or I can add ultramarine blue. I'm going to get the same, or I'm going to get a very similar effect if I do. So I'm going to add some ultramarine blue into this yellow-green here, and it's going to turn it more blue-green. Now, see, what's actually happening is it moves down into shadow. The yellow gets subtracted out of the green, and it's yellow-green transitioning into blue-green. Let's see if it did enough of that. Not sure. Just a little bit more right here. And I'll test it to be sure I've got the right thing. Because it's very, very dark. When it's very, very dark, sometimes it's easier. And I can see where I wipe off my palette knife there. I think that's probably enough. So when we're doing that transition, then we would start from the shadow side, which I've always preferred to do. Start from the shadow side, and you could do it in patches if you want to. If you started from the shadow side, there's the shadow side. Then, if you wipe off your brush and pick up that dark transition, then you could transition value. Then you can weave those two together like this. Pull down, weave them together so that we really can't see. And there's your transition right in there, where you really can't see where the dark ends and the light begins. I'll add just a little bit more here. This is not the extreme dark, but this is in that transition side. There we go. So this is sort of what you'd see here. Now, another thing that happens, and I'm going to move into that right now, here when it's under overcast, another thing that happens that is different from when it's in a direct warm light is that we get a little of that. If the pepper is really, really shiny, like we have right here, we get a little bit of that color, that cool color from the sky that seems to reflect on there. And so in that case, what we can do, we can go here on the light side, and let's take a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'll put it right over here, and I'm going to pull enough light into it. I want to be sure to value correct that. So we'll just pull a little bit of light into it. And then we'll need to knock down its intensity just a hair. So I'm going to reach over here for my transparent oxide red. I'm going to put just a little bit of that right here. It's not enough right there. And I'm going to value correct that. And we do this when we're in the middle of a painting, or when we are painting. We do this all the time. We're changing colors according to what we need to happen. The thing is to be able to know what one color is going to do to the other, so that we can make those changes without having to guess. I'll pull just a little bit of this into here and knock down to a little bit of that saturation of that blue-green. because remember it's desaturated, the sky is desaturated. Now, just a little bit. Now I'm going to add that in right in here. You see, it's the same value. Add it in right in here. Just like that. Get a little bit more of that. There we go. Right in there, just like that. Now, this is not as light as we think it is. So and that's just the particular thing that's happening to that particular color. What I would like for you to do is to observe what you're looking at in terms of hue. What's happening there in terms of how this color is mixing with those light rays that are reflecting onto it, and what are they doing? And so what you would do in that case, then, is just simply add this in like that, you see? And that pretty much translates what you're seeing right there. I'm going to get just a little bit more of a blend there now between those two. Pull out the brush really, really good and just sort of breathe on it with the brush. Very whisper. There we go. There we go right there. And we get that sort of, that is the sort of thing we would do if we were doing that transition in shadow. And so the only difference in the technique you use for the transition when it's in light is you're adding more of that warmth back into it. So let's just go right over here, and here is that warm version. This is what we're seeing right up here. And so I'm going to pull just a little bit more of this just plain sap green into that and get that just a little bit darker right there. Now let's see. And then if you're in that transition right there, you start with the dark, and you're moving, that dark is going to move towards shadow. So we just gradually blend it towards shadow. And gradually blend it towards shadow. And that little technique is the same thing that you would do whenever you have any subject that is rounded and that's bended in its shape, it's curving away from the light. And that's the sort of thing you do. You will see that blending, and that's what the transition does. Transition blends. All right, then on the other side, I'm going to double load this time. You could double load on the other, just showing you a couple of ways to go about it between these two values. And then you gradually then change that lighter and just have it blend very carefully into from the shadow area to the lighter area, sort of like that. And let's put just a little bit more on this side, and so on. So you see, it's a matter of when you say transition, you're gradually, when something's making a transition, it's gradually changing from one something to another something. In this case, it's gradually changing from in shadow to not in shadow. And therefore, gradual always says to you, as a painter, blend. If it's gradual in value, or gradual in color, in hue, or even gradual in saturation, gradual says blend. And so then you develop a good blending technique. And just what you saw, that's pretty traditional, what I did right there. Sometimes just double loading the brush by pulling the brush halfway through each color. That's double loading right there. See that on the palette? That's double loading. You see, as I pulled it down on the palette, I get it blended. And then I'll go up here. Then when I put it on the canvas, you see it goes on blended. I stroked it about 2 or 3 times there. That's out of character for me. I usually try to limit the number of strokes, which is also a good thing to do, because if you overstroke, you're going to get the whole thing blended and you won't be able to tell one value from another. So this is just a little technical thing. I suggest that you pull out some sort of an image that has color in it. Now, if you want to start with a green or a picture of green pepper, go over to Pixabay and just search for green peppers, and you'll find some that you can use to practice with and make yourself just conscious of what happens in that transition with the color as you're seeing it, and then what you do with it with paint and brush. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.